Miami, Florida, March 1980. Bob Marley was dying. The cancer that had started in his toe had spread throughout his body. Doctors gave him months, maybe weeks. Bob had stopped touring. He was receiving treatment at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. But everyone knew the truth. Bob Marley was fighting a battle he couldn't win. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell, because we uncover the hidden gems that shaped the legends we know today. Bob spent his days in treatment, in pain, exhausted, but his mind was active. He thought about music, about Jamaica, about all the things he'd leave unfinished. He tried not to think about death, but death was always there, waiting patiently. One afternoon, a nurse brought Bob his mail. Fan letters arrived every day, hundreds of them. Messages of love, hope, prayers for his recovery. Bob couldn't read them all, but he tried to read some each day. It reminded him why he'd made music in the first place. For the people. One letter stood out. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, desperate. Bob opened it. "Dear Mr. Marley, my name is Thomas Rivera. I'm writing to you about my father, Carlos Rivera. He is 68 years old and dying of cancer at Jackson Memorial Hospital here in Miami. The doctors say he has days left, maybe a week. My father has been your biggest fan for as long as I can remember. When I was a child, he would play your records every morning. No Woman, No Cry was his favorite. He said it reminded him to be grateful for what he had, even when times were hard. My father worked 2 jobs his whole life to provide for our family. He was a janitor during the day and a security guard at night. He never complained. He just worked and came home and played your music and smiled. Now he's in the hospital and he's barely conscious. The morphine keeps him comfortable, but he's slipping away. Yesterday he woke up for a few minutes and asked me, 'Will I ever hear Bob Marley again before I go?' Mr. Marley, I know you're sick too. I read about it in the papers. I know you're fighting your own battle. I have no right to ask you for anything. But if there's any way at all, that my father could hear one of your songs before he dies, it would mean everything to him. And to me. I understand if you can't. I understand if this letter never reaches you. But I had to try. With respect and gratitude, Thomas Rivera." Bob read the letter 3 times. He felt tears forming. This man, Carlos Rivera, dying in a hospital across town, wanting to hear Bob's music one last time. How could Bob say no? Bob's manager had left strict instructions: no visitors, no appearances, no exceptions. Bob needed rest. He needed to focus on his own treatment. Going to another hospital, especially at night, would be dangerous. His immune system was compromised. He was weak. But Bob didn't care about any of that. That night, after the nurses had finished their evening rounds, Bob got out of bed. He was wearing hospital clothes, an IV still attached to his arm. He carefully removed the IV. He'd watched the nurses do it enough times to know how. Bob got dressed. Jeans, a t-shirt, his leather jacket. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. He looked sick. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. But he was still Bob Marley. He still had his music. Bob grabbed his acoustic guitar. He'd brought it to the hospital, couldn't bear to be without it, and walked out of his room. The hallways were dimly lit, quiet. A nurse at the station was reading, not paying attention. Bob walked past her into the elevator. Outside, the Miami night was warm. Bob hailed a taxi. "Jackson Memorial Hospital," he told the driver. The driver looked at Bob in the rearview mirror. "Hey man, you okay? You look—" "I'm fine," Bob said. "Just drive." Jackson Memorial was 20 minutes away. Bob sat in the back of the taxi, holding his guitar, feeling every bump in the road. His body hurt. Everything hurt. But pain was just pain. It couldn't stop him from doing what needed to be done. At Jackson Memorial, Bob paid the driver and walked into the emergency entrance. It was after 11 p.m. The ER was busy. Crying children, people with injuries, the chaos of a big city hospital at night. Bob approached the information desk. A tired-looking woman looked up at him. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Carlos Rivera. He's a patient here. Cancer ward." The woman checked her computer. "Are you family?" "No, I'm a friend. Visiting hours are over. Family only after 9 p.m. Bob leaned forward. "Please, it's important. His son wrote me, asked me to come. The man is dying." The woman looked at Bob more closely. Her eyes widened slightly. Are you Bob Marley?" Bob nodded. The woman stared for a moment, then picked up the phone. "Let me call the oncology floor." 5 minutes later, a doctor appeared. His name tag read Dr. Michael Chen. He looked exhausted, but curious. "You're Bob Marley?" "Yeah. And you're here to see Carlos Rivera?" "His son wrote me, asked if Carlos could hear my music before he died. So I came." Dr. Chen stared at Bob. "Mr. Marley, do you know you shouldn't be here? You're immunocompromised. A hospital is one of the most dangerous places for you right now." "I know." "Then why?" "Because he's dying," Bob said simply. "And if I can give him one moment of peace before he goes, then the risk is worth it." Dr. Chen looked at Bob for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Follow me." They took the elevator to the 6th floor. The oncology ward was quiet, peaceful in the way hospitals are at night when most patients are sedated. Dr. Chen led Bob to room 614. "Mr. Rivera is heavily sedated," Dr. Chen said quietly. "He's been mostly unconscious for 2 days. I don't know if he'll even know you're here." "That's okay," Bob said. "I'll know." Dr. Chen opened the door. The room was dimly lit by a single bedside lamp. In the bed lay Carlos Rivera. He was a small man, thin from illness, his skin gray, breathing shallow. Machines beeped softly around him, monitoring a life that was slowly ending. In a chair beside the bed sat a man in his 30s, asleep, his head resting on the edge of his father's bed. Thomas Rivera, exhausted from days of vigil. Bob walked quietly into the room. Dr. Chen stayed by the door. Bob approached the bed and looked down at Carlos. This man who had worked 2 jobs, who had raised a family, who had loved Bob's music enough that his dying wish was to hear it one more time. Bob set down his guitar case and opened it carefully, trying not to make noise. But the sound of the latches clicking woke Thomas. He looked up, confused, still half asleep. He saw Bob standing there with a guitar, and his brain couldn't process it. "Am I dreaming?" Thomas whispered. "No," Bob said quietly. "You wrote me a letter about your father. I came." Thomas's eyes filled with tears immediately. You came? But you're sick. "I'm here," Bob said. "And I brought my guitar. Can I play for your father?" Thomas couldn't speak. He just nodded, crying silently. Bob pulled a chair close to Carlos's bed. He took out his guitar and began tuning it softly. The sound filled the quiet room, the familiar sound of strings being adjusted, the promise of music about to begin. Bob started playing. The opening chords of No Woman, No Cry. His fingers moved across the strings with muscle memory built over decades. And then he sang, his voice softer than usual, intimate, meant for one man. No woman, no cry. Thomas watched, tears streaming down his face, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Bob Marley, one of the greatest musicians who ever lived, sitting in his father's hospital room at midnight, playing a private concert for a dying janitor. Said, I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in Trenchtown. Something changed in the room. A shift in energy, subtle but unmistakable. Carlos's breathing changed slightly. His eyelids fluttered. And then Georgie would make the firelight as it was log wood burning through the night. Carlos's eyes opened, just slightly, just enough. He looked confused, disoriented. The morphine made everything fuzzy, but he could hear music, his favorite song. That voice, that unmistakable voice. Then we would cook cornmeal porridge, of which I'll share with you. Carlos's eyes moved slowly until they found the source of the music. A man sitting beside his bed. Dreadlocks, guitar, singing. Carlos's lips moved, forming words without sound. Bob? Thomas leaned forward. Dad? Dad, can you hear me? No woman, no cry. Carlos's hand moved slightly on the bed. Thomas took it, squeezed it. Dad, it's Bob Marley. He's here. He came to sing to you. A tear ran down Carlos's face. His lips moved again, and this time sound came out, barely a whisper. Am I dead? Bob stopped playing for a moment and leaned closer. No, brother. You're not dead. You're alive, and I'm here with you. Carlos stared at Bob, his eyes trying to focus, trying to understand if this was real or a morphine dream. You're Bob Marley. Yeah, man, I'm Bob. You're sick too. I read the newspapers. Yeah, I'm sick, but I'm not dead yet either. We're both still here. So let's share this moment together, yeah? Carlos smiled, the smallest smile but real. Okay, Bob began playing again. He sang the entire song, never looking away from Carlos's face. And Carlos listened, tears running down his cheeks, his son holding his hand, the machines beeping their steady rhythm, marking time that was running out, but hadn't run out yet. When the song ended, Bob didn't stop. He transitioned into Three Little Birds. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be all right. Carlos's eyes closed, but he was smiling. His breathing had evened out. He looked peaceful for the first time in days. Bob played for 30 minutes. He played One Love. He played Redemption Song. He played songs that spoke of hope and struggle and peace and love. He played until his fingers hurt, until his voice was hoarse, until he had given everything he had to give. Finally, Bob stopped. He looked at Carlos, who had drifted back into unconsciousness, but peacefully this time. Calmly. Without the restless pain that had marked his sleep before. Bob turned to Thomas. He heard it. He knows you love him. And he knows the music is still with him. Thomas couldn't speak. He stood up and hugged Bob, sobbing into his shoulder. Bob held him, this stranger, this son who loved his father so much he'd written to a dying musician and begged for a miracle. Thank you, Thomas finally managed to say. Thank you. You didn't have to. You're sick. You shouldn't have. Music doesn't stop because we're sick, Bob said gently. Music is what we do when everything else fails. It's what we give when we have nothing left to give. Dr. Chen had been watching from the doorway, tears in his eyes. He came forward now. Mr. Marley, I need to get you back to your hospital. You shouldn't be out like this. Bob nodded. He packed his guitar carefully. Before leaving, he touched Carlos's hand gently. Peace, brother. The music goes with you, wherever you go next. Bob left the room with Dr. Chen. Thomas sat back down beside his father, still crying, still processing what had just happened. Carlos Rivera died 2 days later, on March 15, 1980. But those 2 days were different from the days before. He woke up several more times, lucid and calm. He talked with his family. He told them he loved them, and he told them about the dream he'd had. Except it wasn't a dream. Bob Marley came. Carlos told his children, his voice weak but certain. He sat beside me and played guitar. It was real. I know it was real. Thomas confirmed it. It was real, Dad. He came because I asked him to, and he gave you his music. Carlos smiled. Then I can go now. I heard what I needed to hear. At Carlos's funeral, Thomas played No Woman, No Cry as people filed past the casket. Every person there knew the story. Bob Marley, himself dying, had come in the middle of the night to sing to a janitor he'd never met. Bob Marley died 13 months later, on May 11, 1981. When Thomas heard the news, he wept. He'd lost the man who'd given his father peace, who'd shown him what compassion looked like even in the face of death. Thomas wrote a letter to Bob's family. Your father, your husband, your brother, he was more than a musician. He was grace itself. When he had every reason to think only of himself, he thought of my father instead. He risked his health to give a dying man one last beautiful moment. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be half as compassionate as Bob Marley was that night. Today, there's a small plaque at Jackson Memorial Hospital, placed there by the Rivera family. It reads, "On March 13, 1980, Bob Marley came to this hospital to play music for a dying fan he'd never met. Both men were dying. Both men had every reason to think only of themselves. But Bob chose to give rather than keep. He chose compassion over comfort. He chose music over silence. This plaque honors not just Bob Marley, but the principle he lived by. We are most human when we give to others what we ourselves need most."